presentation. This will allow us to share this later on with people who weren't able to join us. So recording has started. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the Change Your Lifestyle, Change Your Life, or we call it the CYL Squared cooking series, Dish Diva, brought to you by the Black Women's Health Imperative. I'm Lene Ritas Carson, Senior Program Manager, and I'm so happy to welcome back and introduce to some of you already know her, but introduce to you our Dish Diva and Lifestyle Coach, Erin Taylor. Hi, Erin, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Good, good. We're really excited about today. So everyone, Erin is going to be preparing 2 dishes for us with a healthy twist, an apple crisp dessert, and a cauliflower dressing. So I've really been thinking about this cauliflower dressing. I'm so ready to dive in and see what this is all about. Now, in case you did not get the recipes in advance, we are dropping a link in the chat so that you can access those recipes on your end. It gives you all the ingredients and the preparation and instructions and cooking instructions. We would also love to have your participation. So remember to use the chat feature to post your questions and comments for Erin during the presentation. We want this to be very interactive. We're going to begin the presentation shortly, but just before we do, a few quick reminders. We will be mixing and stirring, a little sprinkling, some chopping and grating. And if you're anything like me, you might even have some dance music playing in the background. If you are in the kitchen ready to prepare your recipes along with Erin, we ask that you use caution, especially when you are chopping and grating foods. As a courtesy to all attendees, please remember to mute your devices. During the cooking demo, you are welcome to use the chat. We actually want you to use the chat to communicate with Erin and ask your questions and post your comments. And then lastly, Erin is going to hang around after she finishes up in the kitchen to answer more questions for you. So does anyone have any questions before we get started, or can we just move right on into the presentation? Any questions? No? Okay. We're going to get started. I am going to hand it over and take us into Erin's kitchen. So let's see if we can pull this up. And let me know when you can see my screen. All right. We'll go ahead and get started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Erin, your Dish Diva. In this segment, we're actually going to be talking about creating a healthier Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is one of those holidays that is solely based on food. So how do you keep your health journey going when you're gathered together with family? So what I did today is I'm making a couple of recipes that you guys should have already gotten. And they're going to give you an idea on how you can make some of the traditional foods a little bit healthier. So in this segment, I'm going to be making an apple crisp, and I will be making a cauliflower dressing. So 2 staples, of course, dessert is always a main feature of Thanksgiving, and of course the dressing. You can't have a turkey without dressing, right? So you're gonna make some healthy swaps for both of these recipes here. With the apple crisp, you're gonna notice it's not gonna be real heavy in butter and sugar and all of those things, but a little lighter version. And with the dressing, like I said, we're making cauliflower dressing. So the cauliflower is actually taking place of the bread that would traditionally be in a dressing. And we're still gonna incorporate a little bit of like chicken sausage in there for some flavoring component. And you still get that same flavor of the dressing, but a much lighter version. So I'm hoping you guys will be able to make these recipes on your upcoming Thanksgiving. And I'll kind of give you some tips along the way on what you can do as you are preparing for this holiday season. Because on average, people gain about 1 to 2 pounds during the holidays, but they may never lose those pounds. So what we want to do is make sure that we kind of keep on that health journey. If you're positively losing weight, we want to make sure that you don't end up backtracking a little bit after the holidays, okay? All right, so what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna make an apple crisp, okay? Now I chose apples because it's fall, apples are really in season, and because I had a ton of apples after I went apple picking last month. But with this particular recipe, if you wanted to make, you know, a peach crisp or a berry crisp, you could do that as well. You can interchange the fruits that are used in this dish. So what I have here are some sliced apples, okay? And I'll demonstrate to you kind of how I chop this up. The ones that I have in the dish right here do not have any skins on them, but I do like the skins on mine. So what I'll do is I will actually leave some skin on and take some skin off. So there's a little bit of a mix in there. So when coring the apple, I like to make a nice little square shape around the core of the apple. So you're left with this nice little square piece here. And now you don't have any of the seeds, right? I'm gonna toss that in the trash. Since I'm leaving the skin on, we're just gonna slice this up pretty thinly here. Now, of course, if you do not like the skin on the apple, then by all means, you can take those off. You wanna peel the apple first and then slice it up. Another thing you can do if you're preparing this ahead of time, my suggestion is that you squeeze a little bit of lemon, lime juice over the apples so that they don't turn brown. So I had these apples that were in the dish already are pre-prepared, and I wanted to make sure that they didn't turn brown, so I squeezed some lemon over it. Another alternative is orange juice as well. You can squeeze a little bit of orange over top of that. I would recommend the fresh squeezed orange juice. For one, it tastes better and you're not getting any added sugars. And you also get a little bit more nutrients in there. So we'll put these apples in here. Perfect. All right, so I've already squeezed a little bit of lemon juice over that, but what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a little bit of coconut oil. So I just used extra virgin coconut oil. It's not gonna be refined. It has a little bit more of the nutrients left in it. You can also use butter, but you'll see we're only using about 3 tablespoons total of the coconut oil. And you would do the same if you use the butter as well. So we're gonna pour a little bit of the melted coconut over the apples. There we go. Now keep in mind, if it isn't fully melted, it's okay. Once it hits these cold apples, it kind of freezes up a little bit, but that's okay because as you're cooking it, it's going to melt in there as well. I'm just gonna make sure I spin this around. So this is a pretty shallow dish here. So depending on how big you want this to be, and how many people you're feeding, you can also increase the amount that you're using in the recipe, okay? We're also gonna sprinkle a little bit of ginger and cinnamon on the apples. Now these spices are wonderful because they actually add sweetness without adding sweetness, if that makes sense. They're considered warming spices. So when you taste something with cinnamon and ginger, you automatically kind of get a sweet flavor from them. So we're gonna mix these up here. So you can mix this in a bowl too, probably be a little bit easier to mix it in the dish here. So that we get all of that stuff mixed in there. There we go. All right. And then what you're gonna do with the topping is you are going to move this here. So we've got a little mixture. We've got a little bit more coconut oil to help with the, to bind some of the topping. We've got some rolled oats, a little bit of maple syrup for sweetness, and we've got some chopped pecans. And then of course, some more cinnamon and ginger. So we're just gonna layer this over top of the crisp here. So we'll throw in some oats here. And then we'll throw in some pecans. So that'll give you a nice little crunch on top as well. We're gonna shake in a little bit of the cinnamon ginger mix I have here. And a little bit of the coconut oil. Now, if you wanted to, you could mix this together before the coconut oil, the maple syrup, the oats and all of that stuff. You could mix them together before you actually pile it on here, but otherwise this just becomes kind of fun for me, layering all of this stuff on here. I'm going to add a little bit of the maple syrup. All right, and add a little bit more of that coconut oil. There we go. So you can see we're building up a nice little crispy topping here. And it won't be the same as the traditional one by all means, but it actually is a lighter version and it still has a lot of good flavor to it. So just keep in mind, if you're bringing something to Thanksgiving dinner, you can always bring something too bad for your health. Okay. A few more of those on here. And a little bit more maple syrup. And then I think we're ready for it to go in the oven. So one thing you'll want to do is you're going to want to cover this first. And then we're going to bake it for about 20 minutes and then uncover it and bake it for another 10 minutes. You can see before we put it into the oven, it's already quite lovely, isn't it? Very pretty. We're just going to cover this up, a little bit of foil, so that our nuts and the other toppings don't burn. Those pecans for sure will burn if you have them in the oven for too long. You want to make sure we don't leave them in there for very long. Uncovered. Perfect. All right, so this goes in the oven. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to make while the apple crisp is in the oven baking, I'm going to start on the stuffing. Okay, so like I said, this is a cauliflower stuffing. And what we're going to use is a little bit of chicken sausage. So what I have here is some chicken sausage links. Okay, so usually the links come with a little bit of a casing on top of them or around them. I'm going to actually cut that part off because we want this to be more like a ground chicken in our dressing. So we're just going to peel that off there. Voila. We've got the casing off of there. And so now we have basically ground chicken that's got all of the flavors of that chicken sausage that we love so much. And this is an Italian chicken sausage. You can use some other types of sausage as well. So if you wanted to use, for instance, like they usually sometimes have the chicken apple sausage, that would work very well in this recipe. So what we're going to do is we're going to spray a pan with a little bit of spray oil. So I have avocado oil here. Just spraying it a little bit, just so that we have a little bit to work with here. The chicken tends to be a little bit dry, especially compared to red meat. So we want to make sure that we have a little bit of something in there to help it not stick to the pan. So as this is cooking in here, we're just looking to get it crumbly in there. We want this to spread out throughout the dressing. And I like chicken to use the chicken because the pork tends to be a little bit higher in like sodium and fat. Chicken is a little bit lighter. And because you're getting an already pre-seasoned sausage, you will have that added flavor in it. Now that you can also just get some ground chicken or turkey, add some seasoning to it, and you're in a little bit more control on what's going in as far as seasoning goes, how much salt, how much sugar. And then you can just kind of make your own bulk sausage. You don't have to worry about the casing at that point. You're just putting all of the ingredients, all of those nice flavorful seasonings and herbs into the chicken and just let it sit in the refrigerator for about 24 hours. And all of that flavor starts to meld into the chicken. So with this, we're just looking to brown the chicken. We don't need to cook it all the way through because again, it's going to cook a little bit more once it goes into the oven. And just along the way as it's cooking, just keep breaking apart those pieces so it becomes a little bit more crumbly. It smells so good. And of course, if you're using an Italian sausage, you can get spicy. If spicy is your thing, get it spicier. I use mild, just because we have a little one who, you know, I think we give him spicy stuff on accident sometimes. He handles it like a champ, but you know, we don't want to give him too many spicy things right now and get him deterred from eating. That's just about brown there. Okay, so that's good enough. You'll still see like a little bit of pink like on the inside, and that's fine. Like I said, it's going to cook a little bit more in the oven, but we want to make sure that it's partially cooked before you get in there, mostly cooked. Okay, so now that it's brown, we're going to just kind of put it in the pot over here. Get it out of the way. We're going to use this pan now to cook the rest of our ingredients. And you'll be able to use whatever oil is left in the pan. You don't need to really add any more oil to it. And of course, the sausage, the flavoring of the sausage will help to flavor the other ingredients that you're putting in here. All right, so I'm going to bring this over here. So we're going to add a little bowl here of our ingredients, the onion and celery. I'm just going to chop up a little bit more onion in here. The way that I do it, the skin has been peeled. It's cut in half, and what I like to do is cut, this is the base of the onion here. What I like to do is just cut just past the base and through there. That way you have all of these slices that are still kind of joined. On occasion I go too far. But you basically still have this onion intact, right? For the most part. Now what you can do is just take it this way and slice. Perfect. All right, so we got our chopped onion in there. Gonna add that to the bowl. There's some celery in there, so I usually just take the celery stalk, kind of slice that down the middle, and then you can chop. And if you want it a little bit smaller, you can chop it again in this manner here. All right, now we're going to put that into the bowl. All right, and then we're also going to put some garlic in there. I'm just going to hold off for just a second. I'm going to go ahead and put some of the, I'm going to go ahead and put the ingredients that we have in here into the pan. All right, we're gonna stir that up there. Now, one thing that you can do, like if the oil starts to go away, you don't really want to add any more oil, you can actually use a little bit of broth. So I like the low sodium broth, a chicken broth that's got low sodium in it. That way you're not adding too much more salt into your meal. You can actually add a little bit of that there. And it basically just kind of steam sautés it as opposed to the oil saute. But you get the same effect. It keeps the ingredients from not sticking to the pan and the pan drying out. For the saute, I'm throwing food everywhere. Good grief. We're gonna start sauteing this until it gets a little softer. So about 5 minutes or so, you want to make sure that that bite from the onion is gone a little bit, and the onions have sweated out a little bit of their moisture. Okay. And while that's happening, we're gonna add a little bit of garlic in here. So if a recipe calls for, 2 cloves of garlic, I usually put 4. I just love garlic that much. And one good thing about garlic and onions is that they are prebiotic. So that means that they help to feed the bacteria that lives in our gut. So not a bad thing to have a little extra of. So I'm using a grater. It's a little bit easier than trying to chop this into a bunch of little pieces. And then just kind of tap that. We got some garlic in there. Perfect. This way you don't smell like garlic all day. All right. Okay, so while that's sauteing, we're going to go ahead and just get our egg ready to go. We've got 2 eggs in this recipe. We're going to go ahead and lightly beat those as eggs so that they're ready to go when it's time to add everything in. Okay, so that's good to go. So I'm going to set that aside because we're going to add that in with the chicken a little bit later. So just come back over here, give this a little stir. There we go. I'm just starting to soften up just a bit. Try to leave that on for just a couple more minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to just start getting our stuff together in here. So we're going to be adding in the cauliflower with our onion and celery and garlic over here. So what I did today, because this is a great time saver, is I got frozen cauliflower. Okay. So you can buy this at the grocery store. It's in the freezer section. It's already chopped up. And then that way you don't have to worry about ricing cauliflower. And I'll show you here as well. So this is what it's going to look like. It looks like little grains of rice. You're going to put that in here. Now, if you do buy the whole cauliflower, if you have a food processor, which can be your best friend in the kitchen, that you can actually use that to just kind of chop this cauliflower up into rice-like substance. All right, so we've got our cauliflower in there. We're going to add in some of our seasoning components here. So you can buy these little things at the grocery store. So they have like sage, thyme, and this time of year, these are going to be plentiful. Hopefully the grocery stores don't run out of it because this is one of the 2 of the prime seasoning components in a lot of recipes during the holidays. So this is sage and this is fresh thyme. So what you can do as well, I bought them individually, but they do have them where they're packaged with rosemary, thyme, and sage. So you just buy one of these, especially if you're not using a whole lot, you can just buy these already, they're called like a poultry blend. So you can have those there. Alternatively, you can use dried herbs. I prefer the fresh most of the time just because it brings in a lot more flavor. The dried, you will use a little bit less than you would of the fresh, because the dried actually does not have any more moisture left in it. So the flavor gets a little bit more intense. There's something about the fresh herbs I like better. That's almost done. So we're gonna put in our sage. We've got our thyme. And then we're using parsley as well. Here we go. So a couple of things about that, like the parsley you can see here comes in a big bunch, and it's pretty easy to pick off those leaves to chop. And you can chop them up that way. Just get them in a pile, chop, and then you can throw it in there. Now the thyme and the sage are a little bit more complicated. Sage, not so much. Thyme, yes. Thyme and rosemary. So if you're using thyme and rosemary in your dishes, what you'll see is it's like a branch. You have a branch with these little herbs on it. So what makes it difficult is that you don't want to get any of those branches in your food because it will be very hard. You won't be able to chew on those very well. So I like it when the branches are really nice and thick, like this one here. However, sometimes when you buy it, all of them look like this, and they're really tiny and thin, and it's really hard to kind of get all of those off of there without breaking the stem itself. Of course, this one went off perfectly. So sometimes you end up getting a little bit of the stem in there, but if it's a little bit of a softer stem, it won't be as big of a deal. But when you have something like this, where it's nice and thick, all you have to do is just hold one in and slide the herbs off the branch stem. There you go. Okay, and like I said, sage isn't quite as bad because the sage, it's really easy to pick the leaves off of there. So you just pick the leaves. So sometimes the stems are either too fibrous so you can't really eat them, or they have a bitter taste to them. So sometimes the stems are not a good thing to have in there. With the parsley, sometimes if I get a stem in there, I'm not going to be too concerned about it because I can chop it up pretty small. And you don't really taste, you're not going to tell that you're eating part of the stem. All right, so this is coming along well. I'm going to actually add another piece of garlic. So I don't know if any of you guys dislike garlic at all, but some people, I think, tend to overcook garlic or burn it. And once it gets burnt, it actually has a really bitter taste to it. So adding it like at the end of the cooking cycle is usually a better idea. And you get that nice freshness. All right, so we've got this sauteed pretty well in here. The onions have softened up, the celery has softened up. What we're going to do now is just add it to the bowl here. So we've got our cauliflower, we've got our herbs. We're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper in here. Mix that up. We are going to put this into this bowl here. Set that aside, turn that burner off. So what we have here is a nice bowl. We're going to mix it up here so that everything kind of gets melded together with the flavors. So if you're using the cauliflower too, you want to make sure that it's not, it's not frozen still. You want to make sure it's completely thawed. And then just make sure there's not any like liquid in there. So one thing about using cauliflower is that it has a lot of moisture. It's a vegetable, so it tends to have a lot of moisture in there. In this recipe, that's why we add a little bit of the almond flour, because that helps absorb a little bit of moisture in there. And then we're gonna add some chicken broth as well. Okay. Now you'll notice I went a little off script here with the recipe that you guys have. And the reason for that is because I want you to be, since this is a new recipe for all of you guys, I want you to be able to taste it. So if we added the raw eggs and the, partially cooked chicken, you wouldn't be able to taste it. So one of the important things when cooking is to always taste your food along the way, because you want to make sure that you're adding enough flavor into there. If you need to add some more herbs, some spices, something of that nature, you have an opportunity to do so before this goes into a casserole dish and gets baked, right? And of course, the egg that's going in here is going to help hold all of this stuff together as well. All right, so what I'm going to do is just take a little taste of it, because I want to make sure that we have enough salt, pepper, and herbs in there. Again, you wouldn't be able to do this if you added the chicken, so please make a note of that on your recipe. It's pretty good. Just gonna add a little bit more pepper. I like pepper, and just a tiny bit more salt. So this is a good opportunity right here. Like if you need something, if you want more sage in there, you can add a little bit more sage. If you want more parsley, if you want more thyme, this would be a great way to add that flavor into it now. Okay. So now that this is flavored accordingly, we're going to add in our beaten egg. I think we're going to mix that through. And the nice, right now, if you're not planning on going to a big celebration for the holidays, with the pandemic and all that stuff still happening around us, a lot of us are choosing to keep our celebrations small. So one thing I want you, you can think of is these recipes may not be a crowd pleaser for the whole family, but if you're just spending the holidays with your own immediate family, this could be a great way to just start incorporating a new tradition into your family meals. And who says you can only eat dressing during the holidays, right? Especially when you're doing a healthy one like this. Okay, so we've got our meat in there, we've got our eggs, our almond flour in there, and now we're gonna set it into the casserole dish here. You can see it's starting to look like a real dressing, huh? Got those chunks of meat in there. That nice greenery from the sage and parsley and thyme. Spread this out a little bit. And voila. Okay, so the last part of this is purely optional, okay? So we've got a little bit of Parmesan cheese here, it's grated or shredded. We're gonna put that right on top of there. So you can do shredded or grated. Now another option, you can leave this completely bread-free, or you can put some breadcrumbs on top of it, okay? So it's still gonna be a lighter version than the traditional dressing, because now you've got cauliflower instead of bread. So if you wanted a little bit of the bread on the top, you could do some breadcrumbs on there. You can do a little bit of cheese, a cup, maybe a lot, but if you think about cheese as just a garnish, like you just want to get it on top so that you have this like nice crispy brown topping when you're done. Okay, so this is going to go into the oven for about 45 minutes. And then we'll take it out and let you guys see what that looks like, okay? Okay, so it sounds like our apple crisp is ready. So we're gonna take that out of the oven. All right, so there is our apple crisp. There we go. So this is going to be a nice lighter version, like I said, of your traditional apple crisp. But you can smell, it smells like apple cider. It is what is cooking in here. So one thing you can do is just kind of give this a little stir. If you want it to be cooked down a little bit more, you can add it into the oven for a few more minutes. You want to kind of distribute some of those toppings there. You see there's a little bit of juice at the bottom, and now you've got your nice apple crisp. Okay, it sounds like the dressing is ready. We'll grab that and I'll show you exactly what that's going to look like. So what you see here is you see the browning of the cheese on top. Add it to that there. Now you have your dressing to go with your turkey. Yum, yum, yum. So it still has a similar consistency, slightly different texture, but still all the flavor that you get in your regular dressing. So I'm hoping that you guys will try this at home. And you'll notice you have a couple of other recipes on there. We have the mushroom gravy. So mushrooms are full of good benefits, health benefits, including vitamin D, and they help with the immune system. So that mushroom gravy pairs well with a lot of the plant-based this new dressing, as well as putting it over that turkey. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful recipe. So I do suggest that you guys try it. And then the other one is a cauliflower mash. So cauliflower has definitely been very trendy, and it is more nutritious form of a mash than a potato would be. Okay, so if you're a diehard fan of potatoes, definitely try out this recipe. Again, the key is to make sure you get all the moisture out of the cauliflower so that you get a really nice, creamy, thick mash. So I hope you guys have learned some new tricks of the trades today. And hopefully your Thanksgiving will be filled with a little bit more healthy foods and keep you guys on track for your health journey. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to help if you need it. And happy holidays to all of you. Bye-bye.
All right. That was great. Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You've got some questions in the chat, and we're going to also open up the floor if anybody wants to come off of mute and ask your questions or make your comments. The floor is open.
Anyone? One thing I do want to add, if you guys don't have any questions, or maybe you're thinking of some right away, is that just always remember that recipes are just a guide, especially when it comes to like cooking. Now, when it comes to baking, that's a whole nother thing, because baking is like an exact science. So it's hard to tweak things with baking. But with a recipe, it's always just a guide. So depending on, and I know there was a question about whether you have to add chicken. Absolutely not. You don't have to add chicken to it. If the family doesn't even eat eggs, then what you can do is like a version of a lot of vegans will use a flax egg. So flax seeds and chia seeds are seeds that tend to have a lot of omega-3s in them. So they're a really good, healthy superfood. And one thing that you can do is when you soak them, they actually create this gelatinous substance as a result. So if you take a tablespoon of ground flax seeds and put it into probably about 3 tablespoons of water, mix it up really well and just let it sit for a few minutes, you'll notice it has almost that same kind of gelatinous consistency of like the whites of the eggs. And you can use that in the recipe too. And what's great about using that is it adds a lot more nutrients as well to the recipe. You can also do it with chia seeds. You don't have to grind the chia seeds though. Flax seeds, if you're eating flax seeds ever, you always want to grind them because otherwise they just kind of go right through your system. And you don't really absorb any of the nutrients from them. Chia seeds are the exact opposite. And do you guys remember the chia pets from back in the day? Chia. Yeah. So basically what you were doing was you were soaking those seeds and then you were able to take it and spread it over that chia head or chia pet because of that gelatinous substance that was there. So just to kind of give you kind of a reference of what those seeds are. But yeah, you can eliminate the chicken. You don't have to use the almond flour. You can actually use regular flour. This was based off of a keto recipe. So the almond flour was just adding in some healthy fats as well. So it, like I said, it's a guide. A lot of times if I don't have something on hand, I will just improvise and try to use something else that can work in its place. So absolutely, and if you ever kind of get in that funk of what can you add, if you Google something, Google is your best resource because there's so many things out there that people have done with food that we don't even think about anymore. Traditionally, we don't think about.
I know, Erin, there are a lot of meat alternatives out there. So when I saw the question about not adding meat or chicken, is it possible to do like a meat alternative, like I guess Impossible meat or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those would work. I just sometimes with those meat alternatives, I just am a little bit more cautious about those because they are a processed food. And so then you're dealing with more sodium and maybe more sugar. And so you just really have to read the labels very carefully when you're looking at those meat alternatives. You could also do something like mushrooms that can kind of mimic the consistency of a meat. But mushrooms are full of moisture, which like a lot of vegetables are. So you want to cook those down a bit before you add them to it to kind of release all of that water that they have in there. But yeah, there's so many ways to go around that.
Okay, I think Paula had her hand raised. Paula, did you have a question? Paula, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Just barely, Paula. It sounds really faint.
Let's see if I can. Is that better?
Yeah, just a little bit. You can speak up a little bit.
I wonder why. Okay, I'm wondering about flaxseed meal as a replacement for flour.
Flax meal?
Flax meal. Yeah, you can use it as a replacement. It's hard to say as a flour per se, just because but it helps with more binding. So I mean, I guess in a way, yes. Because when you think about what binds things in like baking is a lot of times the flour with the egg. So the flaxseed can kind of act as both a little bit. So I'm not 100% sure on giving you a really concise answer on that. I would have to play with it in the kitchen and see what would happen as a result. But if that's something that you wanted to try with this recipe, you absolutely could, and then see what the results come out to be. I would recommend that if you guys are making any of these dishes for, the holiday, please make them ahead of time. You can cut the recipe in half, just make a small portion of it, so that you can try it out and make sure it's something that you enjoy and that you think your other family members will enjoy as well. And if it comes out really well and you made a big batch, just freeze it And then when it comes time for the big day, you can thaw it out, reheat it, and then you have this perfectly cooked dressing to take with you.
Okay, I think Miss Gail had her hand up. Miss Gail, do you have a question?
Well, I was a little early, but I was the one who asked about the chicken. And I know part of the family, we even have had the apple chicken and things like that. And but I know my son-in-law does not eat any meats or fish, but he eats eggs and cheese. So and when you talk about the substitutes meats, as Erwin said, there's so many extra things, the processed things. You say, oh no, you don't want to eat that. But thank you so much for everything. It was excellent presentation and great ideas. We do use cauliflower things. He's made different things with cauliflower.
Yeah. I think
So
what you end up finding is that a lot of people who don't eat meat, they learn a lot of different ways, and especially if people who don't eat like meat or dairy or eggs, like vegans, I would suggest picking up one of those cookbooks. It's amazing the kind of things that they make with with food, I mean, they take cauliflower and make a Alfredo sauce with it. So I mean, there's just so many different thoughts of and ways of creating a dish without using everything that we traditionally use, right?
yeah, I might get him one for Christmas.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
You recommend any particular one?
Oh gosh, I have so many. There's one that oh, I can't think of his name. There are a couple like soul food vegan ones, which have been really good. I cannot think of I want to say his name is Terry. I'm sorry. But
It's
I think
Brian-
anyone
Brian
that can get
Terry.
it would be good. Yes, thank you.
What is it?
Brian Terry.
Ryan Terry? Okay, thank you.
He has a few of them that are very good.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Sure.
His name was escaping me.
Great.
And I think Romelda
That's
had
who I was going to suggest when she said that. So
Yeah.
we were on the same track.
All right, perfect.
I think Miss Romelda has a question or comment.
Well, my question was about the cauliflower. I know she said we can use the frozen. So, but to make sure it's dry, what's the best way for it to dry? To dry it out? Because
Well,
you know how
Go.
frozen things, you can sit it out, but
Mhm.
then it get kind of mushy.
Mhm.
So what would be the best way to dry it out?
So if you're using it for like a mash, if you get the cauliflower rice that way, I would suggest let it thaw out and then put it into a skillet.
Okay.
Just a dry skillet, and just kind of let a lot of that water just kind of, dissipate as a
Okay.
roll there before you put it and try to mash it up. And with this recipe, with the dressing, I used the frozen. I did not do that and it still came out okay. But
Okay.
what you want to be mindful of, because we added the chicken broth in there, you use a lot less chicken broth.
Okay.
Because you want to make sure that there's that balance because there is going to be some moisture that's going to still come out of like the celery and the onions and even the cauliflower. Just use a little less chicken broth, and you can always add in a little more of the almond meal or regular flour. With this recipe, if you still wanted to have a little bit of bread in there, you could break up some bread pieces in there, and that'll help absorb some of the moisture as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think Miss Romelda also had a question about using vegetable broth instead of chicken broth. And I think I posted that you could use vegetable broth too. I actually like vegetable broths better than chicken broth for some reason too.
Yeah, they're pretty interchangeable. I
Yeah.
mean, unless you don't want to do fish broth, that'll give you a totally different flavor. But between like vegetable broth and chicken broth, I think, and even beef broth, sometimes you can use either. You can definitely use the vegetable broth.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, I like the vegetable broth better as well, but a couple of things. One, what about quinoa instead of bread? Is that better?
Yeah, you could use quinoa too. Again, it would be kind of a trial and error.
Uh-huh.
but you'll want to put the quinoa in there. Make sure with quinoa, anytime you're cooking with quinoa, just to put this out there, make sure you soak it or rinse it first.
Ah,
It has a natural, because a lot of people think they don't like quinoa because it has a natural, like a natural pesticide, as you would, just, you know, for the plant to not be eaten by, you know, pests and insects. It has a weird taste to it. So if you don't rinse it off, you get that taste.
okay.
It's not going to harm you at all, but it's just something that is going to make it taste a little different. So always make sure you rinse it. And then when you add it in there, it is going to absorb some of that moisture. So, but you want to make sure that, you know, there's enough moisture in there so that it gets cooked all the way through as well.
Okay, and then my last question is, my daughter's a pescatarian, so now I find myself looking at anytime there's even chicken in anything, because she's never eaten meat, beef, but red meat, but definitely chicken. And so now I always look for ways to replace the chicken. So is salmon an option? Because I always look at what kinds of fish would be a good replacement for a pescatarian.
Yeah, salmon's always great. I mean, salmon has a really high amount of omega-3s in it, so it's always a healthy choice. But you know, some people make dressing with oysters. I don't know if she just eats that as well, but
My mom used to do that. Yeah, and I hadn't even thought of that.
You could add the oysters into there. Then you could use the fish broth. You know what I mean? Because, or, you know, or you could still use the vegetable broth, but that just gives it a whole nother flavor. And now you're not using the chicken and stuff at all.
Thank you. I forgot about that. My mom used to do that years ago. Thank you. I would never have thought of that again. Thank you, because I never would eat it when my mother did it. So thank you.
Really? Yeah. Now you're gonna have to, but you can make it if you want to, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions or comments? No?
No other questions? We did add the link to the chat, the link in the chat that will lead you to the recipe so that you can have all the ingredients and the preparation instructions. I think our only regret today, Erin, is that we can't taste the finished product from you.
Right.
I know. It was really good. And so just to let you guys know, I usually use my aunt's kitchen because hers is nice and big and beautiful. And so she's always my taste tester. And so when I was done with the recipe, you know, I was like, all right, here you go, Aunt Odella. And she was eating it and she was like, oh, this is really good. And her daughter had actually called while I was there, and she was saying that she wanted to incorporate some healthier dishes into their Thanksgiving this year. And so she asked me to send the recipe and everything. And she was like, oh, I love cauliflower. So I think this can be a really good, you know, a new tradition for families. You know, you don't, because, you know, the dressing Thanksgiving is just full of carbs anyways, you know, right? So the dressing is just another one where you have all this bread. So now you've just incorporated something healthy into the mix. And so, you know, you just eat more of that and a little bit less of the other stuff while you're at your gatherings, right? But yeah, she really enjoyed it. She really enjoyed it. And just keep in mind, like you can use, you can also do like a smoked turkey. That can add some flavoring to it as well. Those are always, you know, plentiful in the grocery stores during this time of year as well. Just take some of that meat off of like a smoked turkey wing and chop it up and add it into the dressing as well. So again, you just playing around with different options of proteins is also good, or no protein. You just leave it as a vegetable dish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments before we close out? No? Well, a special thank you to Erin for always giving us these nutritional gems to stay on track. I'm really looking forward to trying some new things in the kitchen. A special congratulations to our CYL Squared participants who finished up. I think we might have a few on the call today. Congratulations to you all. You did finish the program for it's a whole year. We're so excited and happy for you. We're very proud of you, and we will be reaching out to you with a special congratulatory message very soon. On behalf of BWHI, we thank you for joining us today. We hope that you discovered some helpful tips to use as you approach the holiday season. We would love to hear how your dishes turned out. So feel free to share your results with us at our email address. I'm going to drop that in the chat. You can send us an email to let us know how your dishes turned out. And also, if you would like more information about our lifestyle change program called the Change Your Lifestyle, Change Your Life, or we call it CYL squared, we invite you to visit us at bwhi.org/CYL2. And I'm going to also drop that in the chat for anybody who wants to go visit our website. You can visit that page and then feel free to take the pre-diabetes risk test. It was such a pleasure to have you all as our guests today. Enjoy your weekend and your holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording. Okay, I had to remove the last three.